We recently released the new RAW model in DeNoise AI version 3.3, and I've been seeing some questions about when you should send your RAW file, or even if you should send your RAW file to DeNoise AI to use that model. And it's important to discuss because in order to use the RAW model, you have to first send your RAW file to DeNoise AI before you do any other edits. If you right click and select edit in and then select DeNoise AI over here as the option, you won't be able to use the raw model because Lightroom will create a copy of your photo in either TIFF, JPEG, or PNG file formats, and none of those file formats are supported by the raw model. So again, you'll have to send your raw file over to DeNoise AI at the beginning if you want to use it. Unfortunately, I have another video that goes through in detail that workflow as well as using a standalone workflow if you want to send your raw file to DeNoise AI. So I recommend checking that out. But let's take a more practical look at when you should consider using it and when you might not need to. So I've got these two photos here. The first one was taken in Hawaii with an ISO of 1600. And then the second photo was taken by my colleague Hillary at an ISO of 20,000. Now, that is a high ISO value, but she took it for illustrative purposes. And it actually does a fantastic job of illustrating why you would want to use the raw model. Also, if you look at ISO 20,000, even at a pretty open aperture of 6.3, she was only able to get a shutter speed of 1/320th of a second, which for wildlife is really important. So this ISO setting is not really that far-fetched for this particular example. All right, let's open up the sea turtle photo here. Now, if we go to the develop module, I just want to show you I already made some edits over here. And if we press the backslash key, you can see that's the original photo. And I'm showing that to you for a specific reason. It'll make sense in a second. But here's the edited photo. And you can see I really didn't do that much. I just kind of fixed color and tone just a little bit. So if we zoom in here, you can see at ISO 1600, there is just a little bit of noise that I can see throughout, especially in the background here. You can see how it's kind of noisy over here, and that really becomes more pronounced as you start editing your photo. So the first recommendation that I would make when deciding whether to send your raw file to DeNoise AI is to edit the photo. Edit your raw file and then zoom in certain areas to see if that noise is very pronounced. Here, it's not very pronounced, so I'm not that worried about having to use the raw model. But I can if I want to. And so to do that, I'll go back to grid view over here, and I'm going to take the photo over here in the grid view, and I'm going to drag it onto the DeNoise icon. Now in DeNoise, you can see, if you look at the navigator on the top, and in the preview window, you can see that the image is darker. And that's because when you send a raw file to DeNoise AI, we don't take into account any edits that you make, which is why I showed you that before and after preview, because I wanted you to see the original photo, which is what we have in DeNoise AI. And you can see that with the new suggested panel, we've automatically suggested the raw model, which makes sense because we sent a raw file to it. And if you click on the image, you can see the original, and then let go and you can see the after. And then if we move up here a little bit, you can see that the background has really been cleaned up. If we press and hold, you can see all of that noise over there. And then when we let go, that noise has been removed. So now that we're done, let's click on Save Image to return back to Lightroom. But first, make sure that you have DNG selected. And this is, again, if you're sending your raw file to DeNoise AI and you're using the raw model, I highly recommend selecting the DNG image format and source as the Save Directory option, and then click Save. And now that we're back in Lightroom, we now need to re-import that photo that was just created. And to do that, right click on the folder where that original photo is located, and then select Synchronize Folder, and then click on Synchronize. And now you'll see there is the original photo that was edited, and then we have the output file from DeNoise AI using the raw model. So the first thing you can do is select the original photo and then press and hold on the Command or Control key, and then click on the output file and then click on Sync Settings. And here you can specify which parameters you want to sync over. So I've only selected the options that I actually made changes to, and I'll click Synchronize. Now, in some cases, you might notice that if let's go to compare over here, you might notice that there are some slight differences between your originally edited RAW file and then the DNG photo. And that has to do with how we build our DNG files. We've done a really good job of getting really close to the original RAW file, but sometimes you might need to make some manual edits. And so I'll go back to the grid view, select the DNG file and click on develop. And what I'm going to do here is just kind of open up a few things. I'm going to open up the shadows a little bit and open up the black point. And then let's go to the original photo, back to this photo, and maybe open up the exposure just a little bit more. And so what I'm doing is kind of toggling between the two, trying to see if I can get it similar. And then here, I'm just going to maybe adjust the white balance just a little bit. And here we're pretty close. I don't want to spend too much time because I don't want to bore you, but I want to show you just some of the things that I have had to do to get the DNG file to look close to the RAW file. But what's more important is that if I go and I compare the two and we zoom in, you can see that, especially in areas where there is noise, that's all gone, but we've retained all of that important detail in the DNG file. And even looking at these two images in the compare view, you can see that they are quite similar. Now, let's do one more thing. Let's go ahead and, with a typical workflow, we'll right click on this photo, go to edit in and select Topaz DeNoise AI. And for this example, I'm just going to use JPEG and have everything else as default and then click edit. Now, the first thing you'll notice with the edit in workflow is that we do bring over the changes and edits that you've made to your RAW file because we've baked them into a new, in this case, JPEG file. And if we go to the model list, you'll notice that RAW is grayed out because we didn't send the RAW file, we sent a JPEG, which is not compatible with the RAW model. But let's go ahead and change our view to comparison view. And this gives me an opportunity to show off some of the improvements to comparison view. We also have a video specifically showing these features, but I want to show them to you here. One of the things I can do now is take control of this top left quadrant, which is nice because we have 4 models here and I want to see all 4 models at once. So I'm going to toggle this original switch off. And then I'm going to select this, and actually we already applied the standard. So now we have all 4 models in each of the quadrants. And then I'm just going to go ahead and reposition the focus box. And so looking between these 4 models, I think I like clear the most. And so this is how I've started to use the new comparison view. Now that I've identified that clear is the model that I prefer the most, I will turn original back on. So that now gives me a view of the original photo in the top left quadrant. Another cool thing that we can do now is compare the same model using different settings in multiple quadrants. So it used to be where you can only have one model in each quadrant. Now I can take this quadrant over here and change it to clear as well. And if I go to this setting, you can see that for clear, we have medium and high for noise and sharpness in this top right quadrant. In this bottom left quadrant, I'm going to change the remove noise to low. And then in the bottom right quadrant, I'm going to change the model to clear and select high. Now I can really refine which settings for the given model I want to use. And so I can take my focus box and move it over here, for example. And yep, this top right model seems to have the best combination of settings. So I'll double click on that. And then I will click on apply to return back to Lightroom. And now that we're back in Lightroom, you can see here is the original RAW file. This is the DNG file that we use the RAW model with. And then here's the JPEG file that has the clear model applied to it. And so what I want to do is compare the RAW to the JPEG file to see if there are any major differences. So here you can see that for the most part, they look the same. Again, we had to manually adjust the DNG a little bit, but if we zoom in, you can see that the RAW model is a little bit cleaner. If I'm specifically looking back here in the smooth areas of the bokeh, and definitely is cleaner, but it's not like there's anything terribly wrong with the clear model with the JPEG file. What's most important is that when I look at the head, for example, in any area that has detail, All of that detail is there while having none of the noise removed. And in fact, I kind of prefer the way detail has been preserved in the clear model. But that's just a matter of preference here. So again, in this example, I actually prefer using my regular workflow where I edited the raw file first and then use the edit in workflow to create a new JPEG file, which gets sent to DeNoise AI, and then apply the noise reduction and return back to Lightroom. Now let's go to this parrot photo here that was taken by my colleague Hillary. And again, she used ISO 20,000, but when you look at the EXIF information here, at ISO 20,000, she still was only able to get 1/320th of a second at f6.3. You would think if you were shooting at ISO 20,000, she would be able to get, for example, a shutter speed of maybe, 1/2000th of a second, even at a smaller aperture. And in my opinion, it was the right call to use that ISO because she was able to get the parrot perfectly sharp. However, there's tons of noise over here. And if I go to the develop settings, I just want to show you that I did edit this raw file. Here is the original. And I didn't do much. I just kind of applied some tonal and color corrections to fix the image. And just like before, let's start with sending the raw file over to DeNoise AI by clicking on it from the grid view and then dragging it onto the DeNoise icon. And as you can see, again, we did not take into account the edits made in Lightroom because that's how the raw model workflow works. But you can see that the noise has been removed. If I click, it's just amazing how much of that noise has been removed, but all that really great detail is still preserved. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save Image, and then again, make sure that DNG and source are selected, and then click Save. And again, to get that DNG file into Lightroom, go to the folder that raw file is in, right click and select Synchronize Folder, and then click on Synchronize. Then let's go ahead, select the original photo, press and hold Command or Control, and then click on Sync Settings and click on Synchronize. And if we compare the two, they look pretty close together. You can see all of that really, really important edge detail has been preserved, but none of the noise is present. And that's really impressive. Also, all I did was sync the edits. I didn't really have to make any manual changes. I could fine tune this one a little bit, but for the purposes of this video, you can see that they look pretty similar. Now let's go back to the grid view. And just like before, I'm going to right click on this photo, edit in and select Topaz DeNoise AI. And we'll just select JPEG and click edit. Then let's go ahead, go to comparison view. We'll disable original. And in this top left quadrant, I'm going to select standard just so that we have all four models displayed. And between these four models, I prefer the severe noise model the most. So I'll select it and double click it. And I'll also go ahead and change to zoom to fit. And so that's looking good. Now that I'm happy, I'm going to go ahead and click on apply to return back to Lightroom. And now that we're back in Lightroom, you can see that we have the original raw file here. This is the DNG file that we applied the raw model to, and then this is the JPEG file that we applied the severe noise model to. So let's compare these two files. And right off the bat, the first thing that I notice, if I zoom in over here, you can see just how much better the raw model is at preserving important edge details, especially looking over here at the beak and then at the edges of these fine feathers. They both do a great job of reducing noise. But the other thing is, actually, let me zoom in and I'll zoom out just a little bit. The important point that I want to make is just looking at the flat areas of the background. The raw model does a much better job of presenting those more evenly. Whereas in this model here, I can see some splotchiness in the background. Now, part of that does have to do with the fact that JPEG is a compressed, lossy file format. That makes sense. But still, this is where it makes sense to send your raw file to DeNoise AI first, get that improved noise reduction, and then apply the edits to that DNG file. And so I hope these two examples give you a little bit clearer of an idea of when it makes sense to send your raw file to DeNoise AI first at the beginning of your editing workflow, and when it's okay to just go ahead and edit your raw file and then use the edit in workflow along with one of the 4 existing models. If you don't have DeNoise AI, head over to topazlabs.com to download a free trial and use it with your own photos to see how the raw model works. Thanks a lot.